15th of October, 28.
In a town in a town called Corrientes, which is the capital of the province of Corrientes. The Argentine has provinces.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure how many provinces there are, in fact, but the northeast part of the Argentine is under the province of Corrientes.
Corrientes. And can you spell
And it borders Corrientes.
Okay, great.
On the north, it borders with Uruguay, I think, or Paraguay. I ought to get the map out. On the west is Paraguay,
Yeah.
and the south, of course, is the Argentine. So right at the very north, I think, is Paraguay, and it must be Brazil, because the Iguazu Falls, which are in Brazil, are also seen from the Argentine side. You can see them. So I think in the very, very north is Brazil,
Yeah.
then Paraguay,
Yeah.
and then Argentina.
Right.
Yeah, around. And that's the province of Corrientes,
Corrientes. Wow.
which is in the northeast of the Argentine.
Okay. I've heard of those falls, actually. They're supposed to be absolutely stunning.
Oh, wonderful. I haven't seen them myself, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But I know people say they're, I think it's 5 miles wide.
Oh my
So
goodness.
can you imagine? It's the biggest of all the falls in the world, apparently,
Wow.
in size. Maybe not in depth, I'm not sure.
Right. Wow. Okay, so what's your earliest memory then? Being in Corrientes, having been born, or were you still in Corrientes when you start remembering things?
Not really. Very, very vaguely. Very vaguely. I remember that we used to have a limousine and a chauffeur, and when my father came back, there was still some wealth there before everything had to be cleared, liquidated to pay back these debts that the nephews incurred during the 4 or 5 years that he was away. And there was a chauffeur, and there was we used to have a dressmaker that was at home working only on making smoke on our little dresses for us. She was working, just embroidering and doing work for us.
Wow.
And of course we had a nanny, somebody that used to teach us to be young ladies.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember their names?
Oh no. Very vague recollection. It's funny because I must have been 4, 3 or 4 then, and I should remember it more clearly. I vaguely remember chauffeur.
Yeah.
And I certainly remember the woman that used to do the beautiful embroidery. In fact, the photograph I have in there, I'm wearing a dress with beautiful embroidery on the top, which was done by her.
Wow. So you had a lot of people around you all the time then?
Oh yes, well there you did, because people were poor. There was the rich and the poor, and the rich had lots of people that they supported, who served them, who worked for them.
Right.
As it happens today in India, I suppose, and in other countries where there is that big divide.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have a garden?
Oh yes, in Saladas, where this happened, my last home in the Argentine, we had a big garden. Big garden, Saladas. And there was a lake, there were fields, and there was a lake at the end.
Wow.
And, well, I should tell you the story about the crocodile.
Yeah.
It was very flat land in that area.
Okay.
And there were lots of lakes.
Yeah.
And there was a lake in our grounds, there was a lake not far away, and everyone knew that those lakes had crocodiles.
Right.
Well, we've got the bird.
Oh my goodness.
Well, that crocodile was traveling from one lake to another.
Right.
And he got lost.
Yeah.
And the lights of the house attracted him,
Yeah.
And he, instead of going to the other lake, came to the right into the house, right outside the house.
Okay.
And so they had to. My father called the police, and they called people to try and handle this crocodile, because it was 2 yards or more. He was a big crocodile.
Yeah, it's huge.
And we had to get rid of him, because if he actually came into the house, he could have, you know, really hurt us.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, the police came and they said, no, we won't shoot him, because my mother said, oh, I want to preserve that skin of the crocodile and take it with me back to Europe and have it in the house to remind us how we were saved from what could have been. If there was a door open, he would have come into the house. He could have beaten our legs off while we were having dinner or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So my mother said, I want the crocodile to be intact. I don't want him to be spoiled, so that we can have him embalmed and take him back to Europe. So they lassoed some people who were experts, threw a lasso around him and caught him by the neck.
Right.
And that's it. They hung him.
Oof.
And that's how they got hold. They got him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was. Then people took him away, and he was stuffed and preserved, and we had him with perfectly preserved. All the nails were there, and they put a couple of marbles in the eyes, and he was perfect. And teeth, all the teeth were there.
Oh my goodness.
And his mouth really. So he came back to Europe with us. My mother thought he was something very valuable that she might sell if she needed some money, or whatever. So he came to Gibraltar, and then when the evacuation came, we just didn't know what to do with this crocodile. We couldn't bring him to England, and we didn't know what was going to happen to anything that we had. So my mother gave it to the museum in Gibraltar.
Oh, wow.
And it was in the museum for many, many years.
Yeah.
For about 20 years or 30 years. For a long time. Yes, it might have been 20 years. And there was a crocodile from the Argentine donated by, my family.
Yeah.
And then about, must be 20 years ago? Oh, God, I'm losing track of time. If this was happened in 1940, 40 years ago now. Yeah, my mother got a letter from the museum and said, we really haven't got any room to house your crocodile. Will you take him away?
Yeah.
So she went, and with my brother, and then what to do with this crocodile? They found that if they were going to have him shipped over, it was going to cost a lot of money.
Right.
So they took him, they put a white sheet around him, wrapped him up in a sheet, and brought him as hand luggage. Can you believe it?
That must have looked hilarious.
Can you imagine? What have you got under your arm? Oh, it's a crocodile. Anyway, so he came to England.
Yeah.
And my mother had it in the house under the grand piano in London. And then when my brother got married, he took it.
Huh?
And his wife had it under her grand piano, and then she didn't like it.
Right.
And she wanted to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And Maurice said, well, you better have it, because his new wife didn't want this crocodile. So gave it to us, and we had it at home in Malton under our grand piano.
Right.
And that was all right. Until we rented our house in Malton, and we came to Richmond to live in a flat. And we put him in the attic, and he stayed there. And when we sold Walton, I tried to sell him. I sent him to Barnum's, the auctioneers.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I put a reserve of £400
Yeah.
because I thought there are 4 of us, we'll have £100 each.
Yeah.
And he didn't reach the reserve.
Oh.
So I said, well, I'll have it back. I'm not going to give it away. I'll have it back. And then when we moved here, I said to her, what do I do? So she said, I'll have it in my attic. And she had it in Godalming until the gardener spotted it.
Right.
And she gave it to the gardener.
Wait, who's she?
Yvette.
Oh, Yvette.
Yes.
Right.
So some gardener that worked for Yvette took it. And no one got a penny out of it. And that's the end of the crocodile.
That's a good story, though.
Who followed us around.
The world's best travelled crocodile.
Yeah.
My goodness. So at that moment, when you all realised that there was a giant crocodile outside your house in Saladas, was everyone petrified?
Absolutely petrified.
Were they quite dangerous? Had lots of people died in the area because of them?
I didn't know about that.
Mm.
I didn't know anything about that.
My goodness.
But one knew that they eat people.
Right.
They're hungry. Take your leg or whatever.
Yeah. My goodness.
Mm.
So just to check, Saladas I know it's the last place you were there, but was it the next place after Corrientes?
Yes.
Okay. So just the two.
Yes.
Wow. So you had tons of land then, trees and lakes. And
Yes, it was a big area.
Yeah.
My brother used to have a horse,
right.
and he would ride the horse in the fields around us that belonged to us, and it was fine.
So going back to Saladas then, your childhood kind of memories. I know it's difficult because you've kind of seen it
Well,
again
I
with
used to
fresh eyes.
play. There we used to have a boy
Yeah.
that used to look after the horse
Okay.
and do the errands and things. And
Yeah.
we had 2 maids,
Okay.
and we didn't have a car then.
Okay.
Things were not so good then.
Mhm.
My father had already had to sell the shop in Mercedes, in Corrientes, and buy this small shop in Saladas to try and earn a living. And we had to go to school because in Corrientes, my brother and sisters had it. The nanny taught them at home. They didn't go to school.
Oh, right.
There was a private teacher,
Yeah.
So there in Saladas we had to go to school, to the local school. And it was very strange because they'd never seen Jews in a small town like that, and they thought that Jews had tails, and it was very funny. I remember at school, the children tried to pull my skirt up. We want to see if you've got a tail because you're a Jew. It was very difficult there.
Was that in an aggressive way or they just were children
No,
who
I
didn't
don't think
understand?
it was aggressive. No, they were just curious.
Oh, wow.
Yes, but that was it was very difficult for us in the Argentine.
Yeah.
In Saladas in particular, my mother was very unhappy, and my father was very unhappy because he had lost his fortune, and there he was in this small town,
Right.
trying to survive,
Okay.
and the war was starting, and they were very anti-Semitic in the Argentine. Well, they were, If I always used to say if Hitler was alive, that's where he would be. But then we found out afterwards that a lot of the Nazi heads were there.
Oh.
Well, you've read who is the biggest one of the Final Solution?
Oh, yeah. The guy that came over
Yeah,
recently.
they captured him.
Yeah.
The Israelis captured him, and
Yeah.
he had a trial, and he was, and like him, many others.
Yeah.
Many of the Nazi people all were smuggled in and went in there for refuge. And before the war, they were very pro-Nazi and very anti-Semitic
Right.
in the Argentine. So it was very tough for my parents.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Gosh, and tough as children too, or did you not feel it as much?
I didn't feel it. This is a funny thing. I didn't feel it. I was always having fun. I was always climbing trees, and I didn't. And my parents, my father in particular, whom I was very close to, never passed any fears on to me. He always used to say, and when we came to England, he used to say to me, you know, Polly, this is a very interesting time of your life. You've got to write it all down. And he bought me a little diary.
Yeah.
And he said, write every day what's happening.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting what's happening here.
Wow. What's
happening to you.
Yeah.
And when I got married, I threw the diary away.
Oh, no.
Wasn't I silly?
Yeah. So just to make sure I'm understanding, when the family was in Corrientes, that's when your dad had a lot of wealth, and when he lost.
But he already had lost a lot of wealth by then. He already closed a big store he had in Mercedes.
Okay.
And the one in Corrientes was in trouble because
Right.
he owed so much money. The nephews had got him into terrible debt
Right. Okay.
because they borrowed against it to start their own business. But in the end, they didn't succeed either.
Right.
They didn't succeed.
Yeah. So that's quite amazing then, that in the face of kind of this decline of your father's wealth, and then sort of this.
He might have been I think he was very unhappy.
Yeah.
But as a father to a child, or as a small child,
Yeah.
he never passed it on to me. I never felt his fears.
And did your siblings feel that way too?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think they felt it because both my sisters, my elder sisters, has had nervous breakdowns,
Oh, really?
one after the other, for years.
Oh, right.
And my younger sister has had a very big nervous breakdown, and they suffered from it. But I managed to escape. Somehow my temperament was such. Also, I think the fact that my father was very interested had a lot of time for me.
Yeah.
Rather than the other two sisters who were always crying or were upset.
Right. Yeah.
And so he had more time.
So did you and your father used to spend time just you and him together?
Particularly, no, not so much as in the Argentine, I
Okay.
would say, but much more so when we came to England.
Okay.
Because I used to go shopping with him.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Okay, so you remembered your walk to school.
Yes.
So, and how long was that, do you think, roughly?
Oh, 5-10 minutes.
Oh, you were close.
Yeah,
That's
very
good.
small town.
Okay. And did all you all went to the same school, right? Because there was only
Yeah.
one, probably. Okay. And what do you remember of it?
What do I remember of it? We used to wear a white overall,
Mm.
and the girls went in the morning, I think, and the boys went in the afternoon. I think
Oh, my goodness. That's really
it was only
interesting.
morning. It was a double shift, I think, because there was only one school.
Funny.
But you used to go very, very early. I think it was 7 o'clock in the morning, very early in the morning,
Right.
and be home for lunch.
Mm-hmm. So they separated boys and girls.
I think they did. I wonder if I'm right. Why do we go to school in the mornings only? Was it because it was too hot in the afternoon, or was it? Can't remember.
So you'd have breakfast really early then?
Very early. We used to get up very early. And go.
What was a typical
And a
breakfast?
lovely. We used to wear a white smock overall that was always starched and very, very clean. It was a definite uniform we had to wear.
Right.
And I used to have long hair with a plait.
Yeah.
Yes, very long.
Mm-hmm. And what was a typical lunch or a typical breakfast? Because it wasn't cornflakes
Well,
and milk.
at home, might have been just some bread. Can't remember. Certainly, we used to eat a lot of eggs because we didn't have. My parents were very orthodox, as I mentioned, and because we couldn't buy kosher beef, my father learned to kill chickens in the ritual Jewish way, and we kept chickens, so we always had chicken for our meal, main meal, and eggs And we used to grow vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And
So it was really hot then in summer.
humid.
Humid. Okay.
Very humid and very hot.
Do you miss that? Do you like the heat?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah, can imagine.
Yeah.
What about friends, best friends when you were there? Do you remember
No.
a school pal?
No, my mother really didn't like us to mix with the local people too much.
Oh, that's
They were a
interesting.
different class, and no, we didn't mix with the children too much when we were there.
How did you feel anything about that?
Well, first of all, they used to think that we were so different because we were not from the Argentine. My father came from Tetuan in Morocco. My mother from Gibraltar. We were Jews.
Right.
We were different.
Yeah.
So it was difficult for them to accept us, I suppose.
Yeah.
So the easy way out was to ignore them. I don't know, suppose so.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Mm.
So, but it seems like you're quite different from all your siblings, though. So
Yeah.
you didn't really have like a circle of friends then, maybe, or would you say that?
In the Argentine, no.
Oh, that's interesting.
No.
Okay.
We used to play maybe with the boy across the road. He would come across the field and we would run and climb trees together and do that sort of thing. But we didn't sit down, didn't have birthday parties with children and that sort of thing.
Right.
Not then.
Did you ride your brother's horse?
No.
Did you want to?
We weren't. I think it was too big for us.
Oh yeah, would have been massive.
Yes. Mm.
So, when you left Saladas, you went to. You must have.
That was a very interesting trip back. My father liquidated
Right.
a shop,
Mm.
and we went to Buenos Aires. We spent 1 month in Buenos Aires,
Right.
staying right in the heart of Buenos Aires,
Mm.
and we had a wonderful time. My father wanted us to see Buenos Aires,
Mm-hmm.
and we went to the opera there,
Right.
to the Colón Opera House.
Wow.
I slept right through it, but he wanted us to experience it,
Yeah.
and it was great.
Mm.
And then we boarded we came across on a liner. I don't remember what the name of the ship was.
So what?
That came from Buenos Aires to Gibraltar.
Right.
But we went along the coast.
Mm-hmm.
We stopped in Montevideo, I remember
Okay.
that. And we stopped in Rio,
Right.
and we stopped in Santos. And then we came across.
Right. What was the? Do you know maybe what the exact day? Sort of what was the decision to suddenly up and go?
The war.
The war.
The war was coming,
Mm-hmm.
and my parents read about Hitler and
Yeah.
and they were so anti-Semitic there.
Mm.
They just thought we were, and business was bad by
Yeah.
then. My mother wanted to get away from there.
Yeah.
How can we grow up in a small place like that?
Mm-hmm.
What chance did what these girls and boy have in
Yeah.
meeting other Jewish people?
Mm-hmm.
It was impossible. So they made the decision
Mm-hmm.
to come to the family and be in Gibraltar. And then the war broke out.
Were you prepared as children? Did you know that this decision was coming? Was there a lot of open discussion?
No open discussion, no.
So
We were just told we were going to leave the Argentine and we were coming to England.
and
And
you
it
were
would be lovely, we would be with all the family, and there would be lots of children we could play with and have lots of friends with.
right. How old were you at that moment?
10 or 9. 1939. So I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
How do you remember how you felt at that when the day that your parents said, right, we're leaving? we might never come back kind of thing.
No, I don't remember.
That must have
No,
been
I think
strange.
they were excited to be coming away from there, but sad that he was coming back a very poor man,
Right.
and sad that the war was imminent, and as Jews we didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit great anxiety for them. So, what would be interesting to have in this book? I'm not sure.
All of it.